yellows. And all of this basic stuff can be done in Lightroom. So you should be doing these basic adjustments in Lightroom and then coming over here into Photoshop. Now, if I had the raw file, there was a tree stump right here. So I'm just gonna go ahead and delete all of those. So what I did is I held the Option key and clicked the eyeball, and to delete all these, I'm gonna select that, hit all of them with the Shift key and delete. So I'm gonna get my lasso tool, hit this L for lasso. I'm gonna copy this, Command C, Command V to paste, hit the V key and Command to move that over, Command T, rotate, and let's just pretend that there is a log stuck there in my background. So let's say that there was that log there and I wanted to get rid of it. I would create a new layer, Command J, hit L for the lasso tool, circle what I want to remove right there, and then the computer in Photoshop is going to use content aware, so I'm going to hit the Shift and delete key, and so it says contents here. I want to hit content aware, so it's going to look at the pixels around my selection, and the computer's going to guess what should go there. That's not 100% accurate all the time. So you see, if you look a little closer, see that blob there? So now that's like one way to skin a cat in Photoshop. So I would hit the S key for the clone stamp tool, and I would copy some area from over here and just kind of stamp this in to kind of blend that out. Make my brush a little bit bigger by hitting the bracket keys. So see, it copied a little bit right there. So I'm going to back up, Command Z, Command Option Z to back up again, and then hit my Option key to sample an area. So I'm going to sample from over, let's see, I want to clean up this, so I'm going to sample from right here and then click. See how it, see right here how it was redundant? That's kind of tricky with this clone stamp tool. So now I'm going to go over here and hit J for the retouch healing brush, so spot healing brush. I'm going to make my bracket key larger than the area that I want to remove, and I'm just click over the top of it and it's removed. So let's say that there's these, this is organic right in here, these little flecks of dust. Let's say that I wanted to make this look a little bit more magical, and I wanted to increase some of those. I'm just going to flatten my layer, and I'm going to copy some of these by using the clone stamp tool, S, and you can see how it's trying to pick up what's there. So I'm going to hit my S key for the clone stamp tool, which is this one right here, clone stamp. If I hit the Option key and hover over it, see that little dot? Click it, and then click again. See how it just copied? It copied that little fleck of dust. So then I can go over here and hit the Option key again. Make the brackets a little bit smaller, copy that, and paste. But the problem is, if you can see closer up, is see how I copied it there, but you're getting a little bit of that green behind it? Yeah. So that's where Photoshop comes in really handy, and I should be on a layer. So if I have another layer here, you never want to edit on the background layer because it's destructive. So Command J for a new layer, or you can go to Layer, New Layer from Background, and then just hit OK. So it'll copy this background layer. So what I can do is, let's do that again. So I want to copy this fleck of dust, and I want to put it here. But I've got that background, right? Let's copy that again. I'm going to hit a layer mask, and this is where the pad comes really in handy with the pen tool, because you can get more fine details. With a mouse, it's like using a potato. So now I'm going to hit my brush key, and while I'm on this layer mask, I'm going to use my brush tool right here. Brush tool. Black conceals and white reveals. So if I want to take out that green part, I'm gonna make sure that I'm on the black right here and on the layer mask. If I'm here, it's gonna make black on my photo. If I want to remove that green part, I'm going to be on my black palette and use the brush and just kind of go around here and remove that black. So that way I'm only getting that fleck of dust. A little bigger, and then that's a little better. So this is what we're, and see what the issue is that it doesn't always work for everything. So in my opinion, I wouldn't do that. I would delete it because that looks like a now green fleck. It doesn't look right. So you could maybe change the layer mode to screen to get this to look a different color, to make it look brighter or more vibrant. And that's just kind of where you have to play around with it. So it's not working there. So this is where I would go to like Etsy or a shop somewhere and buy stock backgrounds or stock glitter and bring that file in here and then flip the blend mode to where I only get the specks of light. So let's try something here. Marquee tool to copy that, Command C and Command D to deselect, Command V to paste it. And let's take a curves adjustment, which I use curves for everything in Photoshop. There's so much you can do just with curves because I can highlight the blacks, the whites, the midtones, in RGV color mode. Then I can go into the red channel, the green channel, the blue channel, and manipulate the color tones of the image. So that's pretty cool. So what I'm going to do with this curves adjustment here, if I can remember correctly, I may have to do some playing around with it, but I'm going to make this dark. So where I only see those flecks of light. Didn't work. Can't remember exactly how I did that before, but there's a way to do it. I have to go research it. But anyway, what you would do with a layer mask is, like, let's say you bought glitter from a photographer. There's tons of people who sell Photoshop overlays and stuff like that. This would come in a black layer and you would only see gold specks on there. So then I would flip that layer to screen, and then I would just get the flecks of dust there to put it in the photo. So let me see if I have anything to composite with. What's this? So see how that says .psd? That's a PSD file. So other people sell Photoshop templates, so I could plug in photos in here like this, drag and drop, move that over, and then you want that to, let me turn that off. So that's photo 1, so I want to bring it up above here. Turn it on, and then I want to clip it down by holding the Option key and clicking, and then it will mask off my image in template. So this is really, really handy work for creating albums. So Command T to resize this. So let's say that this was one of those pretty butterflies like this, because this is an overlay that I've purchased, but I don't have it on this computer. So let's just say that I'm going to use one of these and put it in the image somewhere. So I'm going to grab this, okay, so hit the V key, and and we're gonna drag it on top of the other file over here. I want it on, where did it go? Here. Hey. You see how Photoshop is just like, it has a mind of its own sometimes? Okay, so my images are there, and they're kind of large. So depending on what you're wanting to do with this, you could decorate this and make it like a card, and leave those here and put some text up here like happy birthday or whatever. I think I moved my image. See how that's got a repeating part there? I accidentally moved my image on one of the layers and then flattened it, so now I can't go back because I flattened that layer. Okay, so here's those butterflies. Let's say that I only wanted, let's take the red one. I only want the red butterfly, but I'm kind of stuck with it, right? Because that's how the layer comes. So I would hit a layer mask right here, hit B for the brush tool, increase the brush size with my bracket key, zoom in a little bit, and then just erase this butterfly. So now I can work with just the butterfly. So then I would hit my, now I want to get off of my mask so that I can move and resize this butterfly. So Command T to resize. I can move it around and up. I can rotate it. And then I can also scale, rotate, skew, distort, change the perspective. So I can make it bigger or smaller. I can skew it so where it's like looking like it's in her hand and so on. So I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. Hold on. I need to go to scale. So scale the size by holding the shift key down so that you, if you don't have the shift key down for any time you resize anything in Photoshop, you're going to get distorted stuff like this. So I don't know if you've ever seen in a template, sometimes web designers will accidentally resize an image and it looks really long and narrow, and it's because they didn't constrain the proportions. So that's what I'm doing right now with holding the shift key, is constraining the proportions so that I maintain its integrity. So I'm going to place it over her hand and then just downsize this and then zoom in so I can see what's going on, and then place it there and then say OK. So let's say that I want to copy this butterfly. Since I don't have the PNG file of it right now, I'm going to hit L for the lasso key, circle this because I want to copy this. Actually, what I'm going to do is hit W for the wand key, the magic wand selection or the quick selection tool. So W, and then make this smaller, and I just want to select this. So this is how you cut out images in Photoshop. Like let's say my headshot was shot on a gray background, and I work for a certain company, and I want to put that on a billboard or advertisements. So it kind of looks like a news photo to me, but I would put RGV news in the background and, you know, kind of Photoshop myself there. So I want to add that little selection, so hold the shift key and then just kind of go over that edge again. So now I'm going to hit Command C to copy that, and then Command V. Hit the V key and press Command and move that over. So it's a little patchy because I need to mess with the feather on the magic wand tool so that it selects a little bit more pixels or kind of fades the pixels out. It's better if you've already have the PNG file that's cut out. It saves a lot of time. So I'm gonna just move this around. And let's say that I want to put this butterfly flying into her, right? Let's just make more butterflies. So Command T, and then whoops. I'm going to right click, flip horizontal so it's not exactly the same, and then I'm going to move it around, tilt it so it looks a little bit different, change the size of it a little bit smaller. Now let's make another one. So Command V, so it's going to copy that last layer, and then hold the command key and V to move that over so we can have one going this direction and up. I'm gonna right click and let's change let's skew it a little bit so it looks a little different and like it's not the same. So see how the butterflies are already looking a little bit different with the same one. Command V again to paste the same butterfly, hold the command key, and then I can move that around. So one floated on top of her head, or in this hand, move it here. But see how that's redundant? So I want to change it. Command T, let's flip that horizontal and rotate it up. And then move that up a little bit. I'm going to zoom in to see what we're doing. And so see how that doesn't look like it's in her hand? Let's say that it's in her hand a little bit more. And it's a smidge bigger. So hit my layer mask tool, B, because I want to conceal that, so I get the black brush and make this small. And then I'm going to just kind of erase that a little bit. So now it looks like it's behind her hand, like it's actually in there and she's holding it. So let's say that there's one flying on her dress. Command V. Oops. Where did I put it? Okay. So let's say that there's one right about here, and I'm going to turn it the other direction. I want it flying into her. And because it just kind of looks like it's floating, it looks like it hasn't landed on her dress. So what I would do, this part gets a little bit complicated, is it needs a shadow. So when you're starting to work with fine art composites and stuff, you really have to understand light, the direction of light, where it's coming from, where shadows should land, because it has to make sense to the viewer. Otherwise it's going to look like it's floating there, something doesn't belong, and then you lose all believability in it. So that's really where you have to know how to match the colors and the tones in Photoshop, and lighting and so on. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start labeling these because I get confused. So that's just a butterfly. And I want to create a shadow, so I'm going to make a copy of this layer, Command J, and then I'm going to make a curves adjustment layer, and I want to make this black. Then I'm going to clip it down with the Option key, or I can hit this little button, hide this toolbar, so now it's black. So now I'm going to merge these two layers, merge those two layers, and turn that off. So there's my butterfly, and this is going to be my shadow. So then I do Command T, I'm going to flip that upside down, and I'm going to drag it here and say okay. So now I'm going to come back here, and where's the light coming from?
The back, kind of. Which
Yeah,
one's her
she's
hair?
backlit. So where should the shadow land if she's backlit? It's kind of hard to say, right? So it's just kind of like right underneath, very faintly. So that's too dark. I'm going to go up here to filter, and I'm going to blur this out using a Gaussian blur. And you can see here how this starts to fade. It's a little lighter. There we go, we'll blur it there. Then we can change the opacity a little bit, get a layer mask, and I want to delete some of this off of there a little bit. And I want to skew this to the side. Whoops. Skew. See how it's like kind of underneath the butterfly now? To the back. Okay, and then I want to wipe that off of the butterfly, so just get the black brush and take that off. So now it looks like there's a little shadow underneath her. Now pulling back, that's way too dark. So
Mm.
now we just mess with the opacity. So now it's just like very faint. You probably wouldn't even notice it, but the viewer will pick up. Like, they may not say, oh, there's no shadow there, and there's supposed to be a shadow there, but they'll know that there's just something off because it's not believable. So now it looks a little bit more like that butterfly has landed on her dress. So then I could go in here and make another contact shadow by bringing down some blacks, inverting that layer, and then painting on that area just right in here where the butterfly would have landed. So since I'm on a black layer mask now, to reveal that space, I need a white brush. So I'm just gonna kind of color that in a little bit. And then just bring down the opacity a lot. Okay, and then we'll go to blur. So it's filter, blur, Gaussian blur. And then we'll just kind of blur that contact shadow a little bit until it looks appealing. So you just, this is where you become an artist, because you just use your eye and kind of what looks good to you. So much there, right about there looks good to me. Okay, so you guys get the idea. That's not perfect. I would probably mess with that a whole lot more, but we'll move on to something else. So let's say, like, see that in the background? I'm just now noticing that there's like a wagon or something back here. Let's get rid of that. So I'm gonna flatten all these layers because I'm done with that. I might go over here and take a snapshot so that way I can go back in time. Once you go so many steps in Photoshop, you can't go reverse yourself back to the beginning because the history only has so many steps left in the history. So I always take a snapshot in case I get too far and I can't back up. I can at least go back to this snapshot and then start working again. So I have created my own shortcut key. So I use Command, comma, to flatten a layer, or go to layer, flatten layer, flatten image right here, right there. So you only see that if you have more than one layer. So I'm gonna make a new layer, so Command J, and I want to get rid of this. So there's several ways to do it. I can use the clone stamp tool, which I rarely use the clone stamp tool because it's patchy and I've noticed redundancy and then it just looks fake. So I can like cover that up a little bit. And then I could use the spot healing brush. So there was the clone stamp tool, backing up. Now I can use the spot healing brush to kind of fix that. Kind of blend that around. So that's two ways to do the same task. I'm going to delete that layer. Command J. Here's another way. I can use the content aware tool, circle it with the lasso key, shift, delete, make sure it's on content aware, hit OK. And there you go. It's not 100% perfect. Sometimes it does really well, sometimes it just kind of misses the mark and you have to use another method to kind of clean it up. So that's why it's really important to know how to do the same task several different ways, because one tool in Photoshop isn't like a fail-safe for every time you want to do something. But it did a pretty good job here. Another way to do it, that was 3 ways. Here's the fourth way to do something. So I'm going to hit my lasso tool and copy this area. So I'm going to select this, Command C, Command V, hit the V key to move, and then drag that layer down right here, create a layer mask, invert the layer, hit B, I'm on a black layer mask, so now I want to reveal a certain part, make sure I'm on the white brush, increase my brush size, and go over the spot right here that I want to fix. So see how it's kind of redundant right there, so now I can go back and click on this layer, Command T, We can make that a little bit bigger so I have more space. And I can start painting again right here. Let's take that off a little bit and off of her hair. So that's another way, and here's probably the fifth way to do it. You could copy the whole image. What happened there? Okay. Command A to select all, Command C to copy, and then Command V. You can do all of this from Edit. Select, copy, and paste is right here, but I use these shortcut keys. This is a lot faster. If you see me editing something, I can fly through images in under like 2 minutes most of the time, and I like to be quick about it. I don't want to sit on the computer forever. Okay, so I copied that layer, and so I click it on and off and you don't see anything because it just copied the layer right on top. So what I'm going to do is I want to get rid of this spot right here, so I'm going to hit the V key and then just move the image down so that way this part is right over that area. Hit the layer mask, B for brush tool, and then I'm on a white layer mask, so I want to reveal this area. Wait, invert that because that's the correct layer, and then make sure I have a white brush and then just kind of paint over this part right there. So that's 5 ways to do one task in Photoshop. Alright, let's say that this branch right here bugs me,
Oh my god, I just saw that.
and J. So I'm going to get my spot healing brush tool right here and just kind of go over it like that. And it's the same thing. You're going to use these tools probably the most in Photoshop. The spot healing brush tool, possibly the clone stamp. I would say use copy and paste over the clone stamp tool and use a layer mask and brush it out, because the clone stamp tool, you'll notice it after I tell you. Sometimes you'll see somebody with an image of grass, and let's say you took a shot of something like a child here, and there's something over here, and there's grass, right? Well, they took something out, but you can see the patterns of grass are repeating patterns, and so you know that they use the stamp tool to like paint over it, and it doesn't look seamless. So that's where I would copy part of it, enlarge the size, move it back, blur it out with the filters and with the filter blur tool,
Making
and
it
so
more
on.
natural.
Yeah, so knowing all those little things are really helpful. Delete that. Another way to do it is use the content aware by selecting with the lasso tool, and then shift delete content aware, say okay, and bye. But see that if you look really close, it didn't quite 100% get it right there. And I think what's going on is that this version of Photoshop might not be updated. I know the one on my main computer is, and they have improved the content aware tool a lot. So okay, well that's kind of the gist of it there.
Now
Let's
that
see.
you pinpointed that stick, I can't stop looking.
Right? Yeah, once you see something in photography, you can't
Just bothers
unsee it.
you.
Now I'm just like, I feel like it's gonna poke me. I don't know.
Yep,
If
gone.
the girl's gonna move back and like boom.
Yeah. So about 15 minutes left or so. So y'all have any questions? You want me to go over something else? We'll work on another image. Let's say that this right here is a mess.
Okay, actually I do have a
Fix that.
question.
Okay.
What does flattening an image do?
It flattens the layers. So let's say I'm over here doing my image adjustment. So this is your tool panel, like what you have in Lightroom. So right here, you have your brightness and your contrast. Make this brighter or darker. This is probably like the whites in Lightroom. Let's do a contrast boost. This is gonna make my image look muddy because the colors have already been edited. Levels. You can go over here, mess with the blacks, the midtones, and the highlights. Let's just say I brought up the midtones a little bit, and then the whites over here, or the highlights. See how the highlights are getting brighter? So then exposure, let's make it a little bit brighter. So this is a really good example of, it's dark here in the foreground, but bright in the background. And you guys know by taking your classes that I was shooting sun flare. So in order to shoot sun flare, you either have to blow out the background, use a reflector card, or bring in a light. So that's why there's kind of a shadow here. So if I increase the exposure to compensate for this darkness here and paint it in Photoshop, I'm going to blow out my whites in the background. So let's just, for fun, increase the exposure, hit the brush key, and let's take off that exposure adjustment in the background. So B for brush, and then like take it off back here. So now I haven't like totally blown out my whites.
Okay.
So
And on Lightroom you can't do that.
you can, but this is a lot easier. Like, I mean, it's just, you can do it in Lightroom. I can show you how to do it, but Photoshop is just, it's easier with the layers because you can really fine tune where you want it. So there's that. Let's say the vibrance, the greens are starting to look a little yellowish, so I'm going to desaturate the, oops, I want saturation. Desaturate the greens just a smidge. I can go and change the color and selective color adjustments, hue, saturation, color balance. This is your white balance. I can make it black and white. Photo filters. These are pretty cool. I use these when I'm compositing, when I want to just blend the subject into the background. I'll use these color filters. So they're pretty cool. Warming filters. These are like using the gels or the filters, right?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, so you can make it look like you're underwater, or like you're cross-processing stuff too. So there's a photo filter. See how it went from green to very warm? So she, like, let's say I like that, but I don't want my greens to look so warm, but I like how the warmth looks on her skin tone, and it got rid of this like cyan tone here in the dress. I could invert that layer and either paint it on just where I want it. See, now it's not affecting the greens. Or I can let it do the whole image and then use the black brush to just mask off where I don't want it to be. So now it's just here on the dress.
So this would help in a mixed lighting situation. When
Yeah.
you're talking orange filters and the blue filters, and if like someone shot something with natural light but they used a flash,
Yeah.
you could isolate the
Yeah.
natural light part and warm it up.
Yeah, you could definitely do that. It's probably not 100%. You can make it better, but with mixed lighting, I think you're still going to have a hard time fixing it in post. So flattening a layer, now to answer that question, is you see all of these layers?
Over here.
You want to flatten this because if you're going to
I'm
go
gonna
and
take this.
save this as if you go and save this as a TIFF file, a PSD, and you don't need these layers, then you're going to have a huge file. You'll see that if you go to like the file size over here, for example, and you go to get info, you'll see the large file size. Where is it?